Welcome to the video about child development in the Alberta Health Services series, Tips for Success, Getting Through Mealtime Struggles. This video will begin with the land acknowledgement and health disclaimer. We acknowledge that what we call Alberta is the land of Treaties 6, 7, and 8. We are living and working on the traditional and ancestral territory of many peoples. We acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis settlements, and Inuit who have lived and cared for these lands for generations. We are grateful for the traditional knowledge keepers and elders who are still with us today, and those who have gone before us. We make this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation and gratitude to those whose territory we reside on or are visiting. This video is intended as general information for all caregivers. It is not intended to provide a diagnosis or to replace the advice of a qualified health professional. If you have specific questions about your child or family, please call 811 or talk to your doctor or other healthcare provider. Child development means the changes that happen in your child with experience and time. How your child thinks, feels, moves, and interacts with people changes. You learned about the neurorelational framework in the connections video. We think of your child as a tree. Quality sleep and stress resilience are the anchoring roots. Responsive connections built on trust are the tree trunk. And skills and preferences are the branches and leaves. This video will focus on those branches. It will help you understand how your child's stage and skills influence mealtime. Please have a snack ready. Pick something hard like a cracker and something smooth like yogurt. Later in the video, you will taste these foods to learn what happens in your mouth when you eat. In this video, you will learn about mealtime through your child's eyes and the impact of temperament on learning about food. How we learn to eat, it's complicated. Developmental stages and what your child's mealtime skills are for their age. And tips for your child to discover new foods. In the introduction video, you learned about using the goal wheel. If you wish, you can add a goal about your child's development. In the middle circle, think about a goal related to your child's skills and preferences. Think about if what you expect from your child is reasonable. Consider your child's age and current feeding skills. As you go through this video, add the strategies or tips you think might work for you, your child, and your family. You can print the goal wheel by scanning the QR code found later in the presentation. It takes you to the goal wheel on the Pediatric Eating and Swallowing website. Let's try to see a meal through the eyes of your child. What would your child say about mealtime? They might say or think, I can't chew that food very well and I lose control of it in my mouth. I get scared, so I spit it out or just refuse it. I really don't like how that food feels in my mouth. I'd rather feel hungry. I'm scared because food used to make me throw up. Or maybe, let me do it. I want to try things myself, even if I don't quite have the skills. It is important to match your expectations to your child's developmental stage and skills. For example, if they can't chew very well, it's more likely they will spit out meat that requires a lot of chewing. Your child can build skills with your support and connection. We'll come back to skills later in this video. For now, let's talk about other parts of development. Your child arrives with a natural tendency to approach the world in their own way. This is called temperament. They may be cautious, curious, a risk taker, sensitive, or easily overwhelmed. Maybe your child takes time to warm up, or maybe your child has really big reactions. Think about how your child's approach to the world affects mealtimes. Remember, you can't change their temperament, and it's part of what makes your child who they are. Understanding and remembering your child's temperament can help you figure out how to connect with them throughout the day. This connection builds trust and helps your child to explore new foods. The connection video talks about how your child's openness to eating is influenced by many things. Some of these things are overall health, sleep, and how much of the day has been spent in a relaxed, calm state. This calm state is described in the connection video as the green zone. These things can affect everyone, even adults. Keep these factors in mind for your household. Whether your child eats or how much they eat can be affected by their level of physical activity, constipation, reflux, allergies, and even poor sleep. In this 5-minute video, Marcia Dunkline, a feeding therapist, describes her experience being served a new food while living in another country. The QR code link to the video was found in the resources section. Please make sure you watch it. She describes things that helped her feel more comfortable: the opportunity to learn about it by watching someone else eat it, the opportunity to inspect it and touch it, and very small tastes to start with. Think about a time when you were given a new food. What made it easier for you to taste that food? How would it have felt if someone put that food into your mouth before you felt ready? Or think about a buffet. How do you approach unfamiliar foods? Do you tend to stick to familiar choices or put new things on your plate? Keeping these things in mind will help you remember how your child might feel around foods that are new to them.
I'd like to tell you a story about grasshoppers. Yes, grasshoppers. When my children were 10 and 13, we went to Oaxaca, Mexico for a Spanish language immersion program. We were going to spend a month in Mexico. We were living with a local family. They were providing our room and board, which meant we were going to need to eat food that was not familiar to my children for about a month. So being the mother that I am, I said, you know guys, we have to eat everything that's offered. We need to be good guests and we can't be fussy about what we eat. And so for a month, we ate all kinds of new foods. We didn't have the same food twice. We had amazing food and my children ate everything that was offered. Even foods that when we got home and I made the same recipes, they didn't want to eat them. So we were all pretty excited to have lived in this household with this family and be good guests. However, the day before we left, our señora said, you know, yo tengo una sorpresa. I have a surprise for you. And she didn't understand any English and we were still just new in our understanding of Spanish. So I said, oh, what is it? And she said, champolinas. Well, I didn't know what that meant. So I looked it up in my handy dandy little Spanish dictionary and it said grasshoppers. So I said to her, well, where are they? And she brought a big bowl. She had a bowl of grasshoppers. So I'm already getting a little bit worried about this. And so, but they were dead. That was a good thing. Because really, I know in some countries, people just pick bugs off the ground and eat them, or at least that's the rumor. So at least these were dead. And they smelled a little like garlic. But there were parts in this bowl. There were head parts, antenna parts, leg parts, body parts, eye parts. There were parts. And my kids are looking at me like, Mom, put your mouth where your mouth is because you're going first. So I said to our señora, well, how do we eat this? And she took a tortilla and she put guacamole on it. And she took a handful of parts. And she folded up the tortilla like a taco and ate it. So I like tortillas and I like guacamole. So I took my tortilla and I put a lot of guacamole on it. And then I put a part right in the middle. I folded up my taco. I ate it. I lived through it. However, this wasn't just a little game we were playing. This was lunch. This was the only lunch we were getting. So by my fourth grasshopper taste, I had a cluster of parts. I mean, I didn't have her kind of a big handful of parts. I had a cluster, but there was definitely a cluster, and they were just sort of crunchy parts in the middle of my guacamole, and I lived through it. So what I realized was I was just pretty proud of myself that I didn't gag, I didn't throw up, and that I made it through it. And we had fun with it. Our kids tried it. We made it a fun occasion. But what I realized as a feeding therapist later on was that I did the same kind of tiptoeing into a new food that some of our really worried kids do. First of all, I had a rehearsal. That is, I got to see somebody else eating it. I got to smell it and sort of get an idea that it smelled like garlic. I got to touch it a little before I put it in my mouth. So those were rehearsals for me. Number two, I got to pair it with something I knew. So I knew tortillas, I knew guacamole, and I could put the grasshopper kind of hidden in that new experience, so it didn't just jump at me as a big scary new experience, but could be a little tinier new experience. And most importantly, I got to put this taste in my own mouth myself and go at the pace I could handle. So I could handle a little bit with lots of guacamole. I could handle a little bit more and a little bit more, and I went at the pace that my system told me I was comfortable with. I will tell you, if you had taken a spoonful of grasshoppers and said, here, open your mouth, here's your grasshoppers, and you would plop them on my tongue, I would have gagged. Probably I would have actually vomited. So what I realize is when we're working with children that are really worried, we want to give them rehearsals. We want to let them see what we're asking them to do before they even get to try it. We want to understand that they need to try it in little tiny ways and give them control over putting it in their own mouth. So because they're the only ones that know how ready and willing their body is to try that new food. And if we're going to make trying new foods positive experiences, we need to consider all of these issues. So what I say to families who have worried children is, think of that new food you're offering your child as a grasshopper. And you'll present it in a way they're more likely to be able to handle it. So good luck with your grasshoppers.
In this video, we use the approach, discover new foods, as a way of learning about food. We know many families find this challenging. As we go through the different ages, we'll use this approach to share strategies. You will see this visual a few times throughout this video. Learning to eat is complicated, and discovering new foods requires all of your senses. For this reason, discovering new foods is about seeing the food, smelling it, touching it, then tasting it and eating it. Children need to spend time discovering new foods in each of these ways. They have not had past food experiences like adults have. Just like children need practice sitting, crawling, and standing before they walk, they need time to smell, touch, and taste a food before they can eat it. Your role is to offer these opportunities. Keep in mind, each child needs a different amount of practice with each of these ways of learning about food. Responsive feeding is all about responding to all the ways children learn about food, not just the swallowing part. We want to give them as much time as they need at each step. Remember, foods we think are the same can seem very different to a child. For example, white cheese versus orange cheese. Changing the shape, smell, touch, taste, or temperature of a food can make it unfamiliar and a brand new experience for a child. The texture of food that children learn to eat changes very much between 6 and 12 months of age. This is because their skills change so much. As your child's tongue and jaw learn to move, they can move from eating purees to soft, solid foods to many different table foods by around 12 months old. Now it's your turn to experience texture, how a food looks and feels. We'll start with a smooth food or the puree that you chose. Close your eyes, take a spoonful, and think about what is happening with your lips, tongue, jaw, and cheeks. Did you open your mouth fully or just enough for the spoon? How did you remove the food from the spoon? Did you tip the spoon or pull the food off with your top lip? Did you leave it sit in your mouth for a couple seconds so it warmed up? And what did your tongue do? Did it hit the top of your mouth when you swallowed? Your brain quickly took in information about the food to coordinate many muscles for swallowing. You also stopped breathing the instant it went down the back of your throat to make sure the food went down the right tube into your stomach. Now, try your cracker. How hard did you have to bite to break a piece off? How did your tongue move the cracker? What were your lips and jaw doing while you were chewing? How easy was it to swallow? Was there any food left in your mouth? Like other muscles in the body, the tongue needs to practice to get better at chewing and controlling the food. Let's go back to children learning to walk. They may seem wobbly at first, but with more practice, they improve. Similarly, the tongue, lips, jaw, and cheeks get stronger and more coordinated with practice. We're going to take a closer look at developmental stages in the coming slides. Understanding what your child can already do and what they're still learning helps us match our expectations to their skills. We are going to begin talking about babies who are just starting solids and move up in age from toddlers to children. Please keep in mind we're not going to talk about all of the things your child is learning at each stage. We will highlight things that impact mealtime. You are welcome to skip ahead to the age and stage of your child. The baby stage, 6 to 12 months. This is a stage of rapid change in how your baby moves, communicates, and eats. As mentioned before, your child changes from a liquid diet to eating family meals during this window of time. At this stage, you can expect your child to explore their environment through movement. Learning to crawl helps with learning to eat. Put everything in their mouth. Learn how to pick up and let go of toys. They might drop food on the floor because they are learning how to use their fingers to let go of things. It might not mean they don't like it. Copy movements you make. Learn to chew by moving their jaw up and down and their tongue to the side. Use their lips to pull food off a spoon and feed themselves. Babies need to try different textures to learn eating skills. Puree, thick puree, lumpy, mashed, grated, diced, and soft are all different textures. Children change constantly, and it is important for them to learn to eat different textures as soon as they're ready, usually before 9 months of age. Babies make major changes in eating skills around the time they start moving, but they need the chance to practice. Make the most of this window of time and offer different textures. Watch what they do with the texture. Their response will tell you if they are ready to keep going to something more challenging or try something a little easier. You can change the texture of food by mashing, grating, or chopping it into very small pieces. You can soften hard vegetables or fruits by cooking or partially cooking. Remember, children don't need teeth to eat solid foods. If you can squish a food easily with your fingers, it's soft enough for a baby to try, even without teeth. Alberta Health Services nutrition classes are available to help you learn more about feeding your baby. Check the link in the resources section in this video to find a class in your zone. Gagging. Gagging will happen, and it is common as children learn how to eat. Gagging moves food forward in the mouth and protects the airway. Your child's face may turn red, and their eyes may water. Sometimes they may make a funny sound in their throat, or they might cough. A child will gag if a teething toy or fingers go too far into the mouth, if they are surprised by a new texture, or when they lose control of food in their mouth. Gagging is not choking. In fact, it prevents choking. When your child gags, let them bring the food out themselves. Trying to help them may accidentally put them at risk. Offer textured toys your child can mouth. This will help reduce gagging and ready their mouth for a variety of foods. Mouthing fingers and textured teething toys helps their tongue practice moving. It's still important you know about choking risks and what to do in the event of a choking incident, just in case. Round, smooth foods and toys or objects under 4 centimeters in diameter are considered choking risks. You can take an infant first aid course to learn how to help someone in a choking situation. Your child can try feeding themselves as soon as they start solids. Let's watch this child using his spoon. He is working on fine motor skills with a preloaded spoon. Some children refuse a spoonful because they want to feed themselves. Some children are more cautious eaters and feel better when they're in control of what goes in their mouth. Remember, learning to eat is messy, and it's how babies discover and learn about new foods. Let's see how this parent followed the child's cues. He was showing signs he wanted to feed himself, so his parent offered different sizes and types of finger foods right on the tray. There are bigger cubes on one side and smaller cubes on the other. A great way to see what your child is ready for. You might see your child push food out of their mouth. This might not mean they don't like it. It could mean your child wasn't ready for that size or they were surprised by the temperature. Pushing food out is a stage of learning, and many times children will pick it up and put it right back in their mouth. You may have heard the term baby-led weaning as an approach to introducing solids. It is a concept of introducing finger foods for the baby to feed themselves at 6 months. People practice it in different ways. Strict baby-led weaning means spoon-feeding, pureed, mashed, and minced food is skipped. As you begin the journey of your child learning to eat, think about what you know of their oral motor skills and temperament. Every child is different. No matter how you choose to introduce safe first foods, respond to your child's communication about it and watch for how they manage with chewing, swallowing, and feeding themselves. Some babies can easily feed themselves different textures, and others may need to start with smoother textures and use a small spoon, either on their own or with your help. Introducing an open cup around 6 months of age helps children learn mature tongue movement for eating and talking. Let's take a look at this child learning to use an open cup. The cup is too big for his mouth, but he's doing it.
Both hands.
You can offer practice with an open cup at meals. It's important the child stay seated while eating or drinking. Your child can reduce the use of the bottle as they learn to use an open cup. Straw cups can also be introduced for travel or convenience. A short straw is best. So, what qualities should you look for in a cup? Look for a really small one. Ideally, the rim should fit into the corners of your child's mouth, and it should be easy for them to hold. A bigger cup would be like you drinking from a large bowl. It's hard to control, and you will end up with too much liquid in your mouth. Look to see what you have at home already. Small glasses like an espresso cup, a plate teacup, or even an empty pureed food jar work well. To introduce the cup to your child, you can sip from it to model. You can then hold it in front of them. If they lean towards the cup, it means they're interested and ready. Touch it to their lower lip and tilt it just enough to offer one sip. The liquid might all dribble out. They might push their tongue into the cup, or they could even cough and sputter. With time and practice, your child can learn to do it themselves. How your child is supported while seating can also affect their openness to discovering new food. Think about what is comfortable for you to sit in. Adults naturally try to be secure when sitting, and children are the same. For example, an adult sitting on a high stool will often place their feet on the lower bar. A well-supported body makes it easier for your child to use their hands for eating. If your child is squirming at the table, they may not be comfortable or secure in that position. To provide more support, you can add folded towels to a high chair. Ideally, the level of the tray is between your child's belly button and nipple line. Have the child sit on an adult's lap. Have the child sit on the floor, seated with their back resting on the wall, or place a stool under the chair as a support for their feet. Keep in mind, your child is growing, so you will have to adjust their seating often. Okay, the toddler, 12 to 18 months. Young toddlers are at the doing stage. This means your child wants to do things on their own, even when they clearly need help. Giving the right amount of help can be tricky. At this stage, you can expect toddlers to eat ground, mashed, or chopped table foods. They have the fine motor skills to finger feed themselves really well. They can bite into a soft cookie, but they might still have trouble with firmer ones. They can move food to the side of their mouth so they can chew, They're still learning to chew, so breaking down thick peels and chewy meats is difficult. They may refuse foods, not because they don't like them, but because they don't have the skill to manage them. They may struggle with foods that have pieces and a liquid together, such as cereal or chunky soup. They also still love to imitate you. So knowing all of this, how can you help them to discover new foods? Because their understanding of language is better, you can offer choices. They can choose their cup or plate. They can choose which food they want first. At all stages, seeing, smelling, and touching happens while eating together and when your child feeds themselves. Children often want to feed you at this stage, so let them. Chew with your mouth open so they can really see what happens. They can smell the food as you chew it. They love to do what you do, and they will likely practice chewing too. You can even blow the smell towards them or give them a kiss for a bigger smell. Help your child label what they see by using words that describe the food properties. The yogurt looks wet, or wow, crunchy. Including your child in food preparation is a way they can touch it without having to eat it. Your child could add spinach to a bowl. You could offer banana coins with the peel on and your child can take it off. If your child isn't comfortable touching the food to their teeth yet, they might be interested in licking or kissing the food. Meats might be spit out because they're too hard to grind down. Chop the meat up to make it easier to chew or use a moist cooking method so it's softer. Remember to continue to avoid nuts, whole grapes, hard candies, and popcorn at this stage. They don't have the skills to handle these and can easily choke. Cut grapes into quarters instead of nuts. Offer thinly spread nut butter instead. Older toddlers, 18 months to 3 years. 18 months to 3 years of age is a thinking stage. They are learning more language and are more independent. You can expect children to have lots of big feelings. Children don't have the skills to manage those big feelings and need your help to calm. They take comfort in routines. They might hesitate when offered new foods, and they use more mature chewing. They can chew with their lips closed and handle bigger pieces of food. They're pretty good at using a spoon and fork at this stage, but they will also use their hands to feed themselves. Keep in mind, you may see your toddlers starting to want to eat the same food prepared in the same way each and every day. We call this food jagging. A period of food jagging is usually followed by completely refusing that same food. If this does happen, give your child a break from that food and try introducing it again in a couple of weeks. How can you help your child discover new foods at this stage? Because big feelings are common, stopping an activity can be hard at this stage. It'll help to get down to your child's level and take a turn playing before you head to a meal or snack. Meal and snack routines are particularly helpful at this stage. Children are comforted by knowing what comes next. There's great information on this in the environment and routine video. Children can be more hesitant with new foods at this stage. Offering a familiar food beside a new food is comforting. Try liked foods with not yet liked foods. A familiar food at mealtime makes children braver about discovering new foods. It's okay if your child doesn't want foods to touch one another. This is where divided plates are really useful. You can show your child how to push apart the foods so it looks better to them, or offer food in a muffin tray or an ice cube tray. If new foods on the plate cause big feelings, show your child to push them to one spot. You could call this the learning spot or the no thank you spot. They can still look at it and smell the new food. They might even poke at it. To prevent your child from getting stuck eating the same food, offer the preferred food every couple days rather than every day. Try to prepare that food just a little differently each time. You can start by changing the shape or color of it. If your child really struggles with touch, try what we call sensory play. Water play, Play-Doh play, or even finger painting with spices or pudding are a great way to do this. This can help your child become more comfortable with touch. To reduce food waste, keep serving sizes small. You can always refill if they want more. The 3 to 4-year-old. They are at a more mature thinking stage. We can expect that your child is skilled at eating with forks and spoons. They can even learn to do some spreading and cutting with a knife. They can chew very well. Meats and veggies are easier to break down, and they don't generally lose food from their mouth. They can drink from any kind of container and don't usually spill much. They are ready for more responsibility around meals. And imaginary play is developing at this stage. So, how can you help them discover new foods at this stage? They are great at utensil use, so surprise them with a new tool. Try a wooden spoon or a spatula for eating for the day. If you're at the look and smell stage with a food, ask your child to pass that food to another person at the table. Use your imagination. Broccoli can be called a tree. We are repeating ourselves here, but involve them in the kitchen. Not only can they stir, scoop, and rip foods, they can start to cut soft foods up with a butter knife or a plastic knife. A stool helps them to reach the counter. They can help with cleanup. Consider making it part of the regular routine. Your child can bring their plate from where you've eaten to where it will be washed. Your child can even put their leftovers into a container. Keep it up with those small changes to familiar foods. Remember that child temperament we talked about. A cautious child may need smaller changes, and an easygoing child might handle a big change. Offering a different kind of sandwich might be a big change. A smaller change might be changing the kind of bread only. Pretend kitchen play is a great way to introduce the idea of new foods too. You can pretend to feed a stuffed animal or pretend to make a sandwich. The older child, 5 years and up. What can we expect at this stage? Children have a longer attention span and ask many more questions. They are starting to understand a little bit about time. For example, you can talk about yesterday and they'll likely understand. Chewing and drinking skills are mature. They can break down foods with a grinding action very easily. They can use utensils very well for feeding themselves and for food preparation. They are also ready for more responsibilities around meals. How can you help them discover new foods at this stage? Have them help bake and cook, put peels in the compost, wipe the table, bring plates to the sink, or pour the drinks. They can get involved in ideas for meal planning. Have them add to the grocery list. Helping with grocery shopping is a great way to learn about new foods. They can bag the apples or unload and put food away when you get home. You can help them connect new foods to ones they've enjoyed in the past. For example, this cheese is almost like the cheese you ate at school yesterday. After you teach them how to do things safely and with supervision, your child over 6 years of age can do things like use kitchen equipment like a grater, toaster, blender, or a can opener. Follow a simple recipe like cinnamon oatmeal or scrambled eggs. Put together a salad and wash dishes. You have learned about development and your child's readiness to learn about food. How your child approaches the world is similar to how they approach learning about new foods. Consider their temperament and how they learn and play. Apply that understanding to meal and snack times. You also learned about getting your child started on solids and new textures and the importance of getting messy. You learned about matching skills and expectations. Your child's eating and thinking skills need to be a close match to what you're asking them to do. You can offer learning opportunities that are a just right challenge when they are connected and open to learning. And lastly, you have some new ideas to help your child learn about foods at different ages and abilities. Take a moment to think about what you heard in this video about your child's development. Think about your child and family and celebrate what's going well. Which tips will you add to your goal wheel related to child development? Which tip could you try? The next few slides have resources that might be interesting and helpful to you. You can connect to the resources through the QR codes, which are the black and white patterns on the screen. Pause the video and scan the QR code with your smartphone camera if you have one. You will be prompted to open the link on your smartphone. As mentioned in the beginning of the video, you can print a copy of the goal wheel from the PEAS website. The Pediatric Eating and Swallowing, or PEAS website, has links to both general public health information as well as more specialized feeding support in case you need it. If you have worries about your child's eating or feeding, either now or after viewing the different topics in the webinar, you can complete the Feeding Matters Infant and Child Feeding Questionnaire. The QR code will take you to the questionnaire. If you need more support for your child's feeding and eating, you can go to the AHS Pediatric Rehabilitation website. If you have questions about nutrition or feeding, please call HealthLink and ask to talk to a dietitian. HealthLink has dietitians available to answer nutrition questions for anyone in Alberta. The first QR code is for the grasshopper story mentioned earlier in the video. The second is the AHS Healthy Parents, Healthy Children resource. You'll find everyday care and parenting tips to support healthy child development in the early years. And the third is a link to nutrition classes offered by AHS. This slide has links to different handouts that might interest you. Thank you for watching this video. Please pause the video and scan the QR code to go to a very short survey. Thank you for taking time to complete the survey. Your comments will be used to improve the child development video. Remember to watch the other videos in the AHS webinar series, Tips for Success, Getting Through Mealtime Struggles.